Howdy folks, and welcome back to the garage. I've got a preview for you of the new American tank line that's coming to Blitz really soon, starting at the Tier 2 M2 light tank and culminating in the Tier 10 T57 Heavy. Going head first into the M2 light, we find right off the bat that it has the lowest hit points in Tier 2 light tanks, but not the worst armor. There are two Tier 2 gun choices, one an autoloader. The autoloader has slightly more DPM than the single-shot 37mm, but far less penetration. I would probably take the single shot, as you have a better chance of getting all of your damage done with its 48mm of penetration over the 30mm of penetration of the autoloader. Maneuverability is strong with this one, with a power-to-weight ratio of 30 horsepower per ton and traverse speeds of 42.97 degrees per second and turret traverse of 38.96 degrees per second. And you'll need that, and the better than 260 meter view range to protect that low health pool. At Tier 3, we have the venerable M3 Stuart, an icon from World War II. Hit points are again the lowest in the tier at 330, but it does have the best armor, and maneuverability is competitive with every light tank in Tier 3. The gun has one of the lowest penetration figures in the tier, but overall DPM is competitive. Despite your best-in-class armor, all of your competitors can penetrate, leaving your worst-in-class health pool as a liability that needs constant protection. Tier 4 brings us another Stuart, the M5. The M5 doesn't stand out from its competitors in many ways, but where it does is having the lowest health pool in the tier at 340 hit points. Again, this is really on the low end of the tier though, well below average. Mobility, armor, and the gun are all competitive though within Tier 4, while the view range is at the higher end. At Tier 5, we move away from light tanks and on to the medium class. The M7 medium tank has 680 hit points in its health pool, which is on the low end for Tier 5, and couple that with armor that is mostly inferior to its competitors means you should take advantage of its excellent mobility and strong view range to run and gun with the excellent penetration and rate of fire. Sniping may be a challenge with the .386 dispersion and a 3.2 second aim time, but could still be done in a pinch. Tier 6 brings us right back to the light tanks with the T21. If you think this looks familiar, you'd be right. It's the lightweight cousin of the T20 medium tank at Tier 7. T21 has a health pool on par with competitors, that's a nice change, in its tier at 900 hit points. Having said that, it has the worst armor profile of the Tier 6 lights. It has on-par mobility and a gun with a decent rate of fire, more than adequate penetration, but a lower alpha damage rating at about 160 hit points. Still, firing just over 10 rounds per minute gives it a DPM of just over 1600, which you should see it do well with a running gun style of gameplay. Try to retain as much of your health pool for later in the battle, as this tank will become quite dangerous to the enemy who still has several beat-up tanks that are trying to survive. Tier 7 and the T71 Light will fill the same role as the T21 with its 1000 hit point health pool, very good mobility, and only enough armor to keep out the weather and possibly small arms fire. A 3-shot autoloader delivers 480 hit points with each magazine and a theoretical total DPM of almost 1900 hit points per minute. This makes the tank a fearsome late-game slicer and dicer that will run and gun any remaining enemies. The gun is also reasonably accurate at .345 and would make a decent sniper with 250 meters of view range, but the glacial 4.3 second aim time basically eliminates it as a sniper in practical terms. Moving on to Tier 8, we have the T69 medium tank with its very French-looking oscillating turret. What is an oscillating turret? Well, if you notice here, the turret body and the gun are as one, and are mounted on a trunnion that allows the whole turret body and gun to depress, elevate, and rotate as a solid unit. This arrangement has the added advantage of allowing a minimal turret profile and still achieving usable gun depression and elevation. A 90mm autoloading gun has 173mm of penetration with regular AP, and 250mm with spicy heat ammo will make your opponents pay attention. Average damage of 225 hit points and an average rate of fire of 8.47 rounds per minute provides a theoretical DPM of just over 1900. You will have to adopt the typical autoloader mindset and be sure you have cover or room to maneuver effectively while your magazine is reloaded for over 15 seconds to avoid unnecessary exposure to enemy fire and depleting your 1400 hit point health pool. Mobility is alright, but nothing to write home about compared to its tier mates with a top speed of 52 kilometers and a mediocre power to weight ratio that makes acceleration sluggish. On the bright side, hull traverse of 59.77 degrees is really good, and a turret traverse of 46.56 degrees is also good. I would suggest playing this tank in a second line support position or even sniping with its 2.4 second aim time, .341 accuracy, and a 266 meter view range. Quite good. The Tier 9 T54E1 medium tank is another with a French-style turret autoloader that comes across as mediocre in many ways. A health pool of 1,650 hit points is on par with its tier mates, and armor is not great, although better than some other mediums at Tier 9. The turret, while not as well armored as the T69s at Tier 8, does have a shape that should allow for some bouncing, but I am not keen on what appears to be an exposed turret ring area. This tank overall is much bigger than the T69, and the top speed is a rather slow 44 kilometers per hour, but traverse speeds are quite good for both the hull and the turret. The 105mm gun has a competitive DPM of 2,446 hit points, and its 3-shell burst damage of 1,050 will be handy in finishing off beat-up tanks. Again, being an autoloader, you have to be able to get into cover to avoid unnecessary exposure to enemy fire while you can't respond. Be in a hull-down position if possible, or have hard cover immediately available. Regular AP penetration of 210mm is competitive, but the 255mm for APCR is underwhelming at best. And finally, we come to Tier 10, the end of the line. Here sits the T57 Heavy tank, a fairly impressive machine. Mobility is quite good for a heavy of almost 55 tons with a 16.38 power to weight ratio, which allows a 35 km/h speed limit and 35.78 degrees of hull traverse and 43.18 degrees of turret traverse. All this mobility comes at cost armor thicknesses, with the front having 203mm, which is reasonable, but the sides and rear are barely worth mentioning at 50 and 38mm respectively. The story does get better when we look at the now familiar turret shape with 127mm of frontal armor, 137mm on the side, and only 50 on the rear. Good thing they have provided a generous health pool of 2,000 hit points to take up the slack that the armor is leaving. The gun is a bright spot though, being a 3-shot autoloader with a burst damage of 1,200 hit points and an overall DPM of 2,776. That's pretty good. In addition, the .321 dispersion is quite good at this tier and gun caliber, and the aim time of 3.5 seconds is competitive. Regular AP ammo can penetrate 258mm, while your spicy heat ammo will penetrate 340mm of the toughest armor, and a good view range of 286.8 meters ensure you can apply this ammo to the enemy as soon as possible. Well folks, there you go. Lots to think about. 9 new tanks coming in the next update. Do you have your free XP ready? Or do you think it's worth burning your hard-earned XP on them at all? Yep, lots to think about. Well folks, there you have it. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like down below. If you really enjoyed this video, hit the subscribe button. Let me know in the comments. As well, be sure to visit my social media pages, both on Facebook and Twitter. This is where I post info that, well, not belonging in a video, it's worth taking a look at. I would also like to give a shout out to my Patreon supporters. You folks are making a huge difference for me. If you like what I do and enjoy the community all of us humans are building, please consider supporting the mission via my Patreon page. There are quite a few options with varying levels of support. Maybe one of them will suit you. Links to all things in the video description. Alright folks, thanks very much for stopping by and watching. I'll catch you next time.